trade list will handle some of this, but at least now he doesn't have the full protection anymore. The other thing I just wanted to talk about with the Blues is I got a call from a player who was upset at the Leddy situation. So Nick Leddy had a no trade clause until June 30th, and then he switched to a partial. And so I think it was like half the league. And, Doug Armstrong wanted to lighten the load in his defense. He wanted to move some pieces around. And Leddy was able, by his contract, to block a trade to San Jose. But he did not have a no move clause anymore. So they could put him on waivers, and San Jose claimed him. And there was a player who called me about it, and he was upset about that. He's like, the CBA just got done, and that is something like I've written before about maybe you just block teams as opposed to the partial no trade, no move, or whatever it is. Like maybe just block teams. And some people thought that was a really good idea, and some people thought that was a really stupid idea. But this particular player was kind of bothered that end around still existed. And, I understand that Nick Leddy, he's not complaining about it. I think I've heard he's got the right attitude about it, which is, okay, this happened. When I wake up in the morning, am I still in the National Hockey League? Answer, yes. Am I still making a very good salary, $4 million? Yes. So what do I have to complain about here, actually? 100%. I completely agree with that. I like people who think like that. I think that's the way you have to move through life. But there was one player who called me and said he just didn't like that is still allowed to happen. By the letter of the law, what happened to Leddy was completely allowed to happen. He just was bothered by it, and I wanted to shout out Leddy for having the right attitude about it.
Wonder if some of those things were brought up in any real degree of earnest during the talks around this CBA, and maybe it just was shot down. But stuff like this, because it's, to your point, like it's not the first time something like this. You mentioned Barclay Goodrow from a couple years ago. Like that was a similar one that would fall into that category too, that would upset a lot of players around the league of how that all unfolded.
Yeah.
I can see why. Can totally see why. All right, the Utah Mammoth. Bring in JJ Peterka, sign him to a 5-year deal. Hello, Nate Schmidt, Brandon Tanev, Vitek Vanacek. You have said this is a team that needs more meat. Imagine finding meat. Are they still looking for some? Or are they starting to like what they got?
I like their moves. Peterka obviously was the big one. That gets a lot of the attention. He's a scorer, a very young scorer. Utah wanted to swing big. I would love to know if Brad Marchand had hit the open market, what Utah would have offered him and what Toronto would have offered him. I would really love to know what those offers would have been. Tanev, I think, was a really good fit for them. As you said, he's a banger. They needed bangers. Tanev is perfect for them. And Schmidt, I think, is perfect for them. He had a great year last year. Just as long as you have a smart role for him. And if you look, with Sergachev as the number one guy, you don't have to ask too much of Schmidt. I like it. I like Utah's moves. Sometimes I think when you go out there to blow the budget and you don't get your guy, I worry that you're going to really walk yourself into trouble. I don't think they did that here. I think that even if they didn't get some of their number one targets, who I believe were guys like Bennett and Marner and Marchand, they still made good fits and they weren't irresponsible with their contracts. I still think they need some meat up there. They're still slightly meatless. Tanev, like I said, helps, but I would like to see a little bit more. Jack McBain is not signed yet. I'd heard they weren't far off, but we'll see what happens there. One name I'm curious about is Nick Schmaltz. Nick Schmaltz is
Okay.
heading into the last year of his current deal, 5.85, and I'm wondering what his future is there. Do they see him as a long-time Mammoth, or do they see maybe moving him to see what they could do for him? That's a name I'm wondering about a little bit.
Utah is beyond the meat right now.
Like
Is what you're
Beyond
saying.
Meat?
Beyond
It's
the
an
meat.
Impossible
Yeah.
Burger?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Beyond meat.
I did want to
Bring
shout
it
out
back
Connor Ingram, too. They signed Vitek Vanacek, so they've got Vemelka and Vanacek. Ingram, as everybody knows, has been battling some mental health, and it's a reality of the business that Utah has to make sure that they've got some stability at the position. But, I just want to send Ingram my best, and I hope he's doing okay.
Well said. The Winnipeg Jets. So life goes on without Nick Ehlers. Mason Appleton's elsewhere. Dominic Toninato is elsewhere. But there is the arrival of Jonathan Taves, Gus Nyquist, Tanner Pearson, Cole Koepke, amongst some others. They got some RFAs to take care of. I imagine Gabe Vilardi would be at the top of that list. Elliott,
Dylan Sandberg.
Sandberg's there as well.
Yeah.
So what's
And
kind
both
of
of those guys went for arbitration, right? So, like, Winnipeg knows one way or another they're going to have those guys under contract. That's arbitration can be a really rough process, yes, but the good thing about it is that that you're going to have the players under contract. And Sandberg is only eligible for a 1-year deal because he's headed to UFA after next season. And Vilardi, he's got 2 years. So since the player elected, if they don't get a long-term deal done, I'm sure the team will ask for a 1-year deal. So it does give them some flexibility. I have no doubt they consider both of those players a priority, but also looming large over all of this is Kyle Connor and Adam Lowry, both of whom are unrestricted free agents. So the Jets will have to do kind of all of these contracts together in terms of what is our vision. So there's a lot of work for them to do. I mean, Taves will be interesting, no question about it. The rumor was that he really wanted to go back to Winnipeg. Is he really opened the process? The idea of him just wasn't, oh, they're the best offer. It's like, no, I'd really like to go there. And his media conference on Friday confirmed that. You could tell he was excited to go, and he's excited to be there. And, with Lowry hurt at the beginning of the year, Taves starting strong becomes even more important. They need him to start on time because they're already down one center with Lowry not ready to be there on time. I think Nyquist is a really interesting bet. The Gustav Nyquist I saw last year, that's not the guy I know. I don't know what happened, but that's not him. It wasn't him in Nashville. They were off all season, and he didn't make a huge impact in Minnesota. I do believe in buy low if you can, and Winnipeg is buying low on Nyquist. I like that for them. I think that's the kind of gamble you've got to take. For me, this year, their key was the start of the season. They led wire to wire. I think next year is going to be a bigger challenge just because of